Get this thing off there. All right, good evening, everybody. We are live again. We appreciate all you guys for your support. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from these live videos. Shout out to all of our supporters, all of those in the revolution, paying attention to the revolution from the United States of America, from international communities, especially the UK. We have lots of viewers from the UK reaching out to us, asking questions. Thank you guys for your support. Hopefully you find these videos useful and helpful, all right? So with that being said, tonight we are focusing on a topic that everybody with a dog wants to master, and that is walking on a leash. And I did get some good feedback from some school teachers that told me I need a bigger whiteboard and I need to write bigger. So shout out to all you guys for helping me out. Hopefully this is big enough. Hopefully I'm trying to figure out this whiteboard thing, make it as best for you as possible. But we're talking about tonight walking on a leash. We're going to do a discussion on it. I'm going to go through some movements and things you're going to need to know in order to teach your dog how to walk on a leash. Then we've got JoJo here. She already knows how to walk on a leash, but I am going to do some demonstrations with her so you can kind of see that live. We're going to try to do it right outside here. That way we can have some more space. But if the connection starts to get a little bit shady, once we go outside, we'll come back inside and use the hallway over here, okay? So anyway, with that being said, you might find these podcast episodes useful, all right? Because they do pertain to walking on a leash. They do cover that topic. So podcast, and our podcast name is Pack Talk Podcast. We just rebranded. It used to be Canine Revolution Radio, so you can probably still find things under Canine Revolution Radio or Pack Talk Podcast. But podcast episode number 22. That one is a Q&A podcast, question and answer podcast. Lots of questions, lots of answers. But I know we talked about walking on a leash. Podcast episode number 28. We talked about training progressions. What are the steps from start to finish to train your dog based on your desired progression, your desired goals? Podcast number 28 would be a great podcast to review. If you've already watched it, maybe you need to watch it again. Maybe we need to talk about it again. Training progressions are so important. We need to break up our end goal into little baby steps and then teach our dog all these little baby steps in order to achieve our goal. All right, so there is a specific skill set that goes into creating training progressions for your desired goal, and that's going to be different for every dog out there. And if you ever want to get on the phone with me and discuss training progressions, no matter where you're at, even if you're in our international community, hit me up, because I'd be more than happy to talk about that, help you to understand and gain awareness of how to build training progressions. If you want to teach your dog how to walk on a leash, you need to have a training progression. If you want to teach your dog how to lay on a pet cot, you need a training progression. If you want to teach your dog to look at you in the face when you say to look, you need a training progression. So training progressions apply to everything, all right? Next podcast I recommend, episode 33, problem solving. We talk about leash pulling, right? Maybe after training, right? We need to problem solve that and figure out, why is the dog doing that? What can we do to retune in that nice leash walking, okay? So again, episode number 33, problem solving. Episode number 36, another Q&A. We've done a ton of Q&A podcasts. I know number 49 is another one, but episode 36 specifically, Q&A podcast. So the podcast is available on YouTube. It's also available on your favorite podcast platform. If you're like me and you drive, you have to go from point A to point B, you're driving, I prefer to listen to podcasts when I'm driving and learn things versus just listen to music. Sometimes I'll do that, but mainly podcast, all right? All right, so those are the podcast episodes I do recommend you refer to. When we're talking about walking on a leash, there's tons of ways that we can teach our dog to walk on a leash. When you're surfing YouTube, you're going to come across a ton of videos. If you just type in how to teach my dog to walk on a leash, you're going to come across hundreds of videos of people trying to tell you how they teach dogs to walk on leashes or what their thoughts are, all right? Now, I'm not saying there's any wrong way to do it, right? There's many ways to accomplish the same goal. Tonight, I'm going to go through our ways of doing it, okay? And there is some variability with each dog on hand on how exactly we're going to teach them to walk on a leash. Specifically at the beginning, we're going to be talking about a dog that has zero training, How do we teach that dog to walk on a leash? Then towards the end, I'll talk about if your dog has already completed training, right, and knows everything. How do you tune in and make sure your dog's walking properly on a leash? So the way that we train, we use a balanced, rewards-based training system. What does that mean? Balanced, rewards-based training system means balanced, right? We're using all 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. Go to podcast episode number 27. We talk about operant conditioning in podcast episode number 27. But a balanced dog training system is using all 4 quadrants of operant conditioning, all right? Rewards-based, what does that mean? It means when we're teaching the foundational levels of training, we're primarily using rewards, high-value rewards, to teach our dog what the expectation is. As the dog understands that expectation and it becomes very fluid to the dog, then we're going to move into our more balanced piece, and we're going to apply accountability or correction for stepping outside of that expectation. All right, so that's the fundamental understanding of the entire training process, the training system that we use. So I'll say that one more time, all right? The foundational level of training, when we're teaching our dog what our expectation is, we're using high value rewards, most likely food rewards, to teach that foundational level of training and expectation, no matter what it is. Once the dog understands that foundation, once the muscle memory of that foundational work becomes very clear to the dog, then we're going to layer onto that some accountability and corrections to teach the dog that if you step outside of the expectation, you will be held accountable. If you're doing what the expectation is, you're going to be rewarded, right? And then over time, those rewards become random rewards. So as we go through this discussion, I'm going to be talking a lot about rewarding, lots of repetitions, constant rewarding, continuous rewarding, right? We're using lots and lots of high value rewards at the beginning of training. A critical piece of training is knowing when to stop using so many rewards. All right, so we want to make sure we know when to use a lot of rewards and then when to stop using rewards as we go through training so our dog doesn't become reliant upon them. With that being said, most people that are training their dogs at home, the issue is they don't understand when to stop giving rewards or how to fade or stop the process of giving so many rewards, right? That is the major sticking block for most people, so hopefully we can clarify that up today. All right, so with that being said, a couple things we do need to note. Why does our dog pay attention to us? Why does your dog pay attention to you? They're not going to walk on a leash for you nicely if they don't understand why they need to pay attention to you. So up here in the top right corner, I had to write it smaller, but a couple things we need to know about. Vital resources. What are things that we can manage that communicate to our dog that we control these things, and that's going to reflect instinctively in the dog pack leadership from us. If you think about the wolf or the wild dog and the dog pack in the wild, the leader of that pack is controlling vital resources. It's providing wild resources to the pack, and that communicates to the pack that that is the leader. All right? So with that being said, there are 3 main components, 3 main resources that we can control with our dog. It's simply management of our dog so they understand they need to pay attention to us. Number 1, time. Let me ask you this. If your dog has not been through training, what is it doing when you're at home but not working with it? What is it doing? Feel free to put it in the comments. My guess is your dog's walking around the house doing whatever it wants to do, right? So what does that mean? Your dog's doing whatever it wants to do. It has no understanding that it needs to pay attention to you or listen to you because it can just do whatever it wants to do, right? So one thing we can do, manage time when we're at home but not working with our dog. If your dog is not trained, if your dog does not know how to spot or relax calmly, or your dog doesn't listen to you when you ask it to walk on a leash with you, okay? You control time at home. That helps correlate to those training sessions. So what do I recommend? If you are home but not directly working with your dog, have it in a kennel. All right? Now some people will say, I don't want my dog in the kennel all day. Well, guess what? If you don't want your dog in the kennel all day, take it on walks and work on your training with it to get it up to a level where it listens to you. Once it listens to you at home, then you cannot use the kennel as much. So that is your motivator to do more work with your dog. All right, but vital resource number one that you can control and manage, and you should, is time. Number two is food and water. All right, you need to make sure your dog's hydrated. So be very careful with the water. That's only going to be in special circumstances that you're actually going to control water outside of potty training considerations. Podcast episode number 2 is specifically about potty training, all right? But water, you're gonna, obviously, I wouldn't leave it in there all night, but have some type of water window, typically from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Take it up for the night, put it back in the next day, all right? Have it available the next day. But food, how many people are out there free feeding their dog? How many people are out there are giving their dog table scraps after dinner? All right? There's nothing wrong with that if that works for you and your dog's listening to you and you want it to listen to you. But if you want your dog to listen to you and it's not listening to you, you need to control vital resource food. How do I recommend you do that? Number 1, have 2 feeding times per day, 30 minutes each, where you put the dog's food down. At the end of that 30 minutes, if the food is not eaten, you pick it back up and then you bring it back down for the next meal. So for example, your breakfast may be at 7 a.m. You put the food down, give your dog until 7:30 with the food. If they don't eat it, right, you take it away. Same thing at 6 p.m., just as an example. In a more extreme case, you could have all food provided to your dog from your hand, all right? That is going to directly correlate the vital resource of food to you, all right? So that's all I'm going to touch on with that. Reach out with questions if you have about that. But again, vital resource number 2 you're going to control is food, right? Vital resource number 3, social interaction. What do I mean by that? Dogs are social beings. They're social creatures, all right? Cats, are they social creatures? Ben? No, no, they're not social creatures. Depends on the cat. You got to go back and listen to our last podcast to learn about cats, all right? But social interaction, vital resource number 3. Okay, what does that mean? How many times have you sat on the couch with your family? Your dog comes up, muzzle nudges you, demanding attention. Paws you, demanding attention. What do you do when that happens? You probably pet your dog. So you're giving it that social interaction, that physical contact when it's demanding it from you. So essentially when you're doing that, you're telling your dog that you listen to what your dog says and wants. So why would your dog want to listen to you and do what you've asked it to do if they're asking you for social interaction, you're giving it to them. So withhold that. Give it to it at key moments in time. All right, so social interaction. So again, vital resources that you control, number 1, time. Number 2, food, water in extreme circumstances. Number 3, social interactions. If you manage these things properly, this will help correspond and correlate your dog to learn to listen to you when you ask it to do something, okay? It's also going to boost the learning process between you and your dog, all right? So now that we covered that, this is what we're doing at home between our sessions, between our training sessions. We are managing vital resources, okay? The 2 main ways that we're gonna teach a dog the foundational level of walking on a leash. Number 1, we're gonna use lures with food. Number 2, we're gonna free shape. All right, number 1, lure. Number 2, free shape. What is a lure? All right, a lure is when I have a high value food reward in my hand and I move my hand where the dog's head is following my hand, right? So that I can manipulate the dog's head and body with the movement of my hand. All right, so let's say I want my dog to learn to walk next to me properly. I'm going to put a piece of food in my hand, and the way that I do this, let me know if that's good for the camera, Ben. I got a piece of hot dog right here cut up about a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. It's between my index and middle finger, right at the second knuckle. That's where I position it. I pinch that into that knuckle with my thumb. So whenever the dog is in my hand wanting to get that food, they can't get it until I release that thumb. All right? I also cut my hand slightly so the dog's nose should fit right into the cup of my hand, and the mouth should be right at the food. That's how I hold a lure. All right, let me go ahead and demonstrate what a lure would look like. Jojo, okay. All right, so we got Jojo. I've got my food lure. See how the food lure is still in my hand. She did not get it. See how she wants the food, right? So I can move my hand around like this. Notice how her body follows her head, right? And this is what luring is, where I have my hand with a high value food reward in it, okay? And then she follows that and moves her body in relation to her head. So luring is going to be a great way to develop the muscle memory that we need with our dog to help us with leash walking. And you could do it in your house just like this, all right? One of the first things you have to do is to teach your dog that being next to your left leg for us is a good position to be at. And how do we do that? We provide constant rewards next to our left leg. So let's say that our dog is somewhere off in front of us like this. Is it good for me to walk my dog if they're off in front of me like this? No. So what do I need to do? I need to lure them to my left leg and build up reinforcement history right here along my left leg. So here is a quick exercise that you could do to start developing that. You have your dog in front of you somewhere. You have a lure in your hand. You show the lure to your dog's nose and you slowly bring it to your left leg just like this. Once they're right here, you say good and you let them have the food. The good is your verbal marker. All right, that tells the dog that they've done the right thing and that they're going to be rewarded, okay? So let's do another one. I've got the lure in my hand. I lure Jojo here next to my left leg. Okay, good, reward. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments below. Jojo, spot. So that's just a quick example of a lure. All right, so again, a lure, we have food, high value food in our hand. We're moving our hand around. The dog follows that. Their body follows their head. That allows us to teach them how to move their bodies in certain ways. All right? Because when you're walking, being next to you is not natural for a dog. So what needs to happen? We have to teach our dog that muscle memory. If I'm walking and I turn to the left, it's not natural for the dog to just move out of my way and know how to move their body around my body. Those are all things that we have to teach our dog, and that's where luring is going to help us. Okay, so again, let me know in the comments below if you have questions about luring. That's the quick and easy on luring, all right? Free shaping is where our dog starts to figure things out on their own and we reward them for that. Okay, so let's say I'm walking with my dog, right? And they're pulling on the leash, or maybe they're a little bit ahead of me. Let's say they're ahead of me. If they turn around and look at me, I can say good and reward them right here by my left leg, right? And that starts to communicate to the dog and teach the dog that reinforcement history. Hey, being out in front of dad or mom, I don't get anything rewarding up here. But if I turn around, I look at them and I start moving to them, they give me a food reward down by their left leg. So that's a good place to be at, okay?
Michael says the lure makes absolute perfect sense.
Good to go. Thanks, Michael. So with that being said, that's what free shaping is. Okay, your dog is figuring things out on their own, and you're letting them know that that's what you want them to do by marking. You're going to say good, and then you reward them. All right, so Jojo here, let me see if I can do an example of a free shape. Okay, we might be able to do this outside, Jojo. Okay. Okay, so notice how she comes over to me. Okay, what is she doing? She's already moving to my left leg. She did that on her own, so I can say good and reward her right there. I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, she's obviously been trained, so it's a little bit harder to show with that scenario. Okay. All right, so we got luring, we got free shaping. Remember the concepts of those. As we continue our discussion, you're going to be maximizing how you can lure different pieces of the behavior, which I'll show once we go outside, all the different luring movements that I would do. And then you're going to maximize your free shaping as you're walking with your dog. All right? One of the things that we have to tackle with our dog is called leash pressure. Okay? Leash pressure deals with opposition reflex. What opposition reflex is it's a dog's natural reaction or a mammal's natural reaction to being pulled off balance. So let's say you get a puppy, you put a leash on it, that leash gets tight. As soon as that leash gets tight, that puppy wants to pull against that force. All right? So that's how we create a leash puller. So we want to desensitize the dog wanting to pull into the leash. All right? How do we do that? primarily free shaping. That dog pulls into the leash, we stop moving, the dog turns around, puts some slack into the leash, we say good, we give them a reward. All right? Hope that makes sense. We'll try to demonstrate that outside as well. So leash pressure is going to be one thing you're working on when it comes to walking on a leash, a loose leash, excuse me. But you want your dog to understand if the leash is loose, we start to get rewarded. If the leash is tight, we don't get anything we want. It starts to get uncomfortable. So that's kind of the concept we want to teach. All right? Before we proceed with the discussion, let me talk about one thing I often say, and I got it along the bottom of the whiteboard here. Your dog will only do what you allow it to do. Your dog will only do what you allow it to do. So if you allow your dog to continue to be a leash puller, your dog will always do that until you stop that. All right? If your dog jumps on the couch and you don't like them jumping on the couch, if you're allowing your dog to do that even though you don't like it, it will always continue to do that. Right? If you have taught your dog to loose leash walk, or maybe you hired a trainer to do that, and then as time goes on, you let your dog get back into the habit of pulling on a leash, your dog will only do what you allow it to do. So if you're allowing it to slip back into old habits and not stopping that, your dog will continue to do that. So that is a very important concept to understand that applies for all aspects of training, but very important for leash walking, all right? All right, a couple things. Next up on the discussion, reinforced, not desirable. All right, reinforced means we need to reinforce what we want our dog to do. You've got to keep this concept in mind. We need to reinforce what we want our dog to do. What do we want our dog to do when it comes to walking on a leash? We want them to walk on a loose leash. So we're going to reward that. We're going to reinforce that. Okay? What else do we want our dog to do? We want our dog to stay at our pace. We don't want to feel rushed because of our dog. So we want to reinforce our dog for maintaining our pace and our adjustments in pace. Maybe you're a runner. You want to run with your dog on a loose leash. You got to practice that pace. Reinforce your dog for maintaining pace with you. All right? Underneath reinforced, we got not desirable. So if our dog is doing things that are not desirable, we must apply some form of something uncomfortable to the dog, some type of accountability to the dog. At first in your training, this is simply going to be the dog pulling on a leash. The collar gets a little bit tight on them, depending on what type of collar you're using. I would recommend either a fur saver or a martingale collar or a prong collar to start off with. All right? So whatever we want or whatever we don't want our dog to do, something that's not desirable, we need to stop our dog from doing that. We need to not reinforce things that are not desirable. Okay? Last, and these kind of tie together, reward, right? What are your rewards? You're going to want to use the most high value reward possible for your dog, where your dog can still think clearly. There's two types of rewards primarily. You got a high arousal reward, which means your dog gets into a heightened state of excitement or arousal. It can't think properly. Think of like a ball with a dog that goes crazy about the ball, like a lab, right? You can't teach the lab how to walk on a leash with a ball because the lab is not really thinking properly. It's so obsessed and hyperactive, crazy about that ball, right? But what would be less than that? That would be a low arousal reward. That would be maybe some food. Some food might get the lab excited, but still able to process and think through information. Then you can crank out your repetitions to build that behavior, all right? You could also use touch, things like that, depending on the dog. You're going to change up your rewards over time too. All right, then you're going to need a collar and a leash. Why do you need a collar and a leash? To prevent your dog from doing things that are not desirable, right? So if I'm trying to teach my dog to walk on a leash, right, and I'm doing that off leash, that obviously doesn't make sense. I need a collar, I need a leash that help me maintain control of my dog, manage my dog, and teach my dog what's going on, all right? So that's kind of the discussion piece. Before we get into the demonstration, let me talk about the concepts real quick, all right? You got a dog, collar, and leash. Remember, for your collar, I recommend martingale, fur saver, prong collar. For your leash, I recommend a 6-foot leash. I prefer leather. Use whatever type of material you want. Recommend 6 feet, all right? You're gonna need to hold on to your leash. Your dog is probably used to pulling away from you. So the first thing you need to do is if your dog's trying to pull away from you, you stop where you're at. You do not let your dog go anywhere. They're staying in vicinity of you on this 6-foot leash. They're probably walking around sniffing. The moment that they show you any type of attention, I want you to start backing up, grab some food rewards and start showing it to them. Let them come to you for the food rewards. When they get to you, you're gonna use your verbal marker, which would either be yes or good, and deliver a reward to them. You're gonna need to do that hundreds of times over a course of many days. What you're looking for to complete this step, you go outside with your dog on the leash. Your dog no longer is pulling. Your dog immediately wants to get attention from you and access high value food rewards, okay? The next step is gonna be teaching your dog, if you want a precise heel position, you're gonna teach your dog to move to your left side. I'll just use the left side as an example. The same thing with the right side. It's up to you where you want your dog to walk. The first thing is we teach our dog to turn around, pay attention to us. That starts to resolve that opposition reflex we talked about. Then we want to teach our dog a specific location in vicinity of us. So what I do is I teach the dogs with a food lure to come to my left side and turn around and face the direction that I'm turning. That whole movement from moving in front of me to beside me, that is an entire muscle memory movement that the dog is not used to doing. So we have to do lots of repetitions to teach that dog that muscle memory movement, okay? The next piece we need to teach is walking at a steady, slow pace with our dog next to us, okay? If the dog shoots ahead of us when we're doing this, we just simply lure it back to our left side and we keep walking, all right? Rewarding down our left leg to build up that reinforcement history next to our left leg, all right? Some people might be happy stopping there, good to go, all right? If you want to start working on some other advanced things, you need to work on turning with your dog. So you need to work on turning to the right. Your dog has to read your body, understand that you're turning, and stay with you on your left side, rewarding the whole time. Also, you're going to need to lure through the turns initially to teach your dog how to move in that type of sequence, okay? I'll show you how to do that outside in a second. You're also going to need to teach your dog how to turn to the left, which is the most difficult turn. Why is that the most difficult turn? Jojo's over here getting excited. Why is that the most difficult turn? Because moving to the left, your dog has to adjust their body out of your way back to your left side and then keep moving, all right? So right turns, left turns. The next thing we have to teach is automatic sitting, where we stop. When we stop, we don't want our dog to keep walking off on us. If you want them to stop and stand, that's cool. What we teach is an automatic sit. So once we stop, we teach the dog to sit automatically, or you could teach him to lay down automatically, okay? Then the last thing we teach is what happens once you know all these things, what happens if you don't do what we've asked you to do. We're gonna layer into a correction, right? Accountability, we're gonna use the leash for that at first, okay? So hope that makes sense. Drop us a comment. If that didn't make sense, shoot us a question. That's the overview description of what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go outside and show you how to do all these things with Jojo, all right? Ben, once we get outside, Jojo, okay. Once we get outside, let me know about the signal. See if we got a good signal, all right? So I got a 6-foot leash right here. I've got a First Saver training collar on her. She's also on the remote collar, but we're not gonna be talking about that today. It's a whole nother discussion, okay? All right, so we're out. We're good on signal?
Yeah, we seem to be all right.
All right, so we're out in our training area, okay? We've got our leash. Hold it as simple and basic as possible. What I usually do, if there's a handle on the leash, you're just gonna stick your thumb through the handle and grip it all like this with all your fingers. If there's no handle on the leash, I would still just wrap the end of the leash like this around your thumb and then grip all your fingers around that. That way you have the best control possible over your dog. All right, so let's just see how Jojo is paying attention to me. This is what we want to see when we come outside, but let's say she's sniffing away from me. Jojo, okay. Let's say she's sniffing away from me. I would wait for her to show me some type of attention. Then I would say good and give her a reward when she comes over to me, okay? So again, she's kind of sniffing over there. Good, right? I do that as soon as she comes to me. So this is the free shaping piece, good. We're free shaping that if you pay attention to me, you get that reward. All right, if you don't pay attention to me, you don't get a reward. All right, let me see if I can simulate it going that way. So I give her the opportunity to make the decision to pay attention to me, and I am ready to reward her when she shows me any type of attention. Notice how she's sniffing. Notice how the leash is tight. Just wait, have patience. If you can free shape this piece, this will go a long way for you. Notice how I'm not letting her drag me anywhere. I'm just holding my ground, letting her make the decision to come to me. All right, I hope that makes sense. All right. So now we're going to go into the next muscle memory piece, which is going to be teaching your dog to move to your left side in heel position. All right, Jojo.
We're getting some feedback that the quality's bad.
Quality's bad, so we'll go back inside. Okay, go back inside. Come on, Jojo. All right, so we're going to go back inside. The quality's bad. Let's see if we can accomplish what we need to right here. Okay, then tell me where I need to be. All right, so hopefully you guys at least saw a little bit of that. Basically the dog's moving away from you. You're holding your position, holding onto your leash. Once they start moving in your direction, you give a mark and reward. You say good and give a reward. So now we need to teach her to move from in front of us to our left side. We have a food lure in our hand. We show it to her nose. We move her body to our left side. Good. Notice I didn't move my body at all. The only thing that moved was her body with my food lure. All right, so I got my lure right here. I just have her come over to my left side, turn around, face my direction. That's all I want to do. All right, so I want her to go from in front of me to beside me and face my direction. All right, now notice every single repetition, I'm using a food reward. Again, remember at the beginning of training, we're using lots of food rewards. Then later in training, we're going to start to reduce our food rewards, okay? So this is the muscle memory that you need to accomplish next. How do you know that that's accomplished? All right, you're gonna start moving your hand without a food lure in it, and your dog starts to move to that position. So you see that? So you go through hundreds of repetitions with the food in your hand, and then you move your hand without food in it, Jojo, just like this, okay? See how she's coming over to my left side? Not as precise and sharp, but still good, right? Good to go, okay? So the next thing we need to work on is walking with her staying next to us, all right? So I'm dealing with a small area right here. So I bring her to my left side. I just walk at a nice slow pace. I want to make sure my hand is about her shoulder level. Good. So I might have to bend down a little bit to make sure that my hand is at her shoulder level. Why do you want your hand at her shoulder level? Because if it's not, if you got your hand up here, what does she have to do to get it? She has to jump, right? What does that develop? It develops a dog that jumps at people, that jumps when you're walking. So we want to promote all four paws on the ground at all times. The only way we can do that is by training that. So notice how all four paws are on the ground. I'm walking nice and smooth. She's right next to me on my left side. So that's step number 2 of training the loose leash, all right? Step number 3 is those left and right turns like we talked about. So what I do is I get the dog into heel position, I start walking, then I'm gonna do a right turn. So I turn to the right. As soon as we finish the turn, good, reward. Does that make sense? So you've got basically 2 types of right turns. You've got a 90-degree turn, which is this right here. You just turn 90 degrees to the right, good. Then you have a 180-degree turn, okay? So that means you're turning around. You wanna turn around as tight of a turn as possible. Good, because that dog has to learn how to develop the skill of moving around with your body, all right? So you got 90-degree and 180-degree turns. So now we're gonna go to a left turn, okay? So I'm walking, I turn left, good, right? You don't give the reward, you continue to lure. You don't give the reward until that turn is completed by you and the dog, all right? So we're luring, we're turning. Notice her body just turned, good, okay? And if you're outside in a big open area, you could go for a longer distance after you make that turn before you give the reward. So that is a left 90-degree turn. Then you're gonna wanna do a left 180-degree turn where you turn as tightly as possible, good. And that dog adjusts to you. Let me see if I can walk straight into the camera so you can see that. So again, we're walking, left 180, you want to turn as tightly as possible. Notice how much her body has to adjust. So you can see we need to do lots and lots of repetitions of that in order to solidify that muscle memory. All right, Jojo, heel. Okay, so let's say I'm walking. After I'm done with all my luring, notice how she turns. Okay, no luring right now. Okay, doing a left turn, right? That was a little bit sloppy. So if I'm doing that, right, I'm throwing those tests in there with my dog without the food rewards. If I see a repetition that's a little bit sloppy or I don't like, it might be a one-off, or that means I might need to go back and do some more repetitions of luring. So I'll just go back and do some more luring repetitions, okay? Hope that makes sense to you guys. Let me know in the comments below if that doesn't make sense. All right, so we talked about teaching your dog to look at you, come back to you when the leash gets tight. We talked about teaching your dog to move to your left side like this right here, okay, into a heel position. All rewards being given along the left leg in order to build up reinforcement history. We talked about right turns, 90-degree turns, okay, that's a 90-degree turn. We talked about a right turn, 180-degree turn. So this is a right 180 right here, okay. We talked about left turns, left 90 degrees, left 180 degrees. All right, so this is a left 90-degree turn right here, okay? Then we're gonna do a left 180-degree turn. So this is the steps that I would be doing. Remember, keep your food lure at about dog shoulder height to promote and teach all four paws remain on the ground. So what's the next thing we need to teach? The next thing we need to teach is automatic sitting whenever we stop. So let's say we're walking, we're ready to stop, so we would stop, and then we would slowly bring our hand up, dog's butt goes down, we say good, we reward. So that's how we're gonna teach the automatic sit. Okay, notice lots of food rewards being given. This is the foundational level of training. As time goes on, we're slowly gonna fade away and not use as many food rewards, but you've gotta get your foundation right. Your foundation is the most important piece, okay? So one more demonstration for the automatic sit. We walk, stop, lure up, sit. See how smooth that is? All right, and then once we accomplish all that, we have to start layering accountability into the equation. So let's see if I can kind of simulate a situation here. Okay, good. So accountability at first is going to be a tug and release of the leash. So let's say we're walking, right, and we stop. No? Good. Okay, so notice I stopped. She wanted to keep walking. I say no, tug and release on the leash. She sits. Good. Notice I stopped here. She stopped here ahead of me. What I would do in this case as I build up this behavior, I would simply lure her back to proper heel position after I gave the correction and she sat there. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's do that again. See if we can do it again. Jojo, heel. So we're walking. Just an example. We stop. No. Good. Okay. You could also, once you're done with the food lures, use the leash to help guide you to position. Change up your rewards with physical touch rewards and food rewards, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Let's take another example. Jojo, go spot. That we can't really simulate right now. Walking down a sidewalk, okay? Walking down a sidewalk, we're walking down a sidewalk. Our dog goes ahead of us while we're walking. No, tug and release on the leash. Dog comes back to proper position. As we keep walking, we say good, we reward, okay? So that's how we're gonna start layering accountability into the loose leash walking. Remember, your dog will only do what you allow it to do. No. Your dog will only do what you allow it to do. So if you allow your dog to start walking ahead of you again or pulling on the leash again, your dog will continue to do that. But if you go through what we talked about today, build up your foundation, take the steps, build the steps up, all right? Start with lots of food rewards, start to slowly stop using food rewards, layer in your accountability, you will achieve success, all right? Refer to podcast 22, 28, 33, 36. 27 is a good one too. Also check out our YouTube page because we have a ton of videos. We're putting out more, but we have several on there about leash walking, loose leash walking, a couple different ways to do it with a couple different dogs. Remember, you're gonna be doing luring and free shaping if you do it the way that we do it. You're gonna be using a balanced rewards-based training system, and you're gonna be controlling some vital resources around your training sessions, all right? Let us know in the comments below what you guys think. We appreciate your support from the United States and from our international community. Shout out to our friends in the UK. And until next time, we'll see y'all later. Out.